Hello everyone, it's me again, Fanboy21, and today we are going to be talking about Harmon Smith. Now, Harmon Smith is the kind of person that I've certainly relied on for consistent content and stuff, and whenever I say this is the last time I'm covering him, which I haven't really lately, because I know that I'm going to come back to him whenever there's a very slow week. And this is going to be one of those slower-ish weeks, because I don't feel like going onto Twitter and just, ruining my brain cells this week. So I have two Harmon Smith videos lined up this week. One that Joe from Seattle covered, which I'm not going to cover this video, mainly because this video I want to cover this topic because it's a shorter video, and it's also one that I think is more relevant to this. But then there's also the Baldur's Gate one that he says there. But I'm going to save that for Saturday, for Thursday or Friday, because that would become more relevant, because then the PlayStation fanboys will come out in droves talking about how PlayStation stuff is going to be good and how Baldur's Gate is releasing September 1st, since this is the August type deal that I'm talking about. In any case, it is time to talk about a Game of the Year conspiracy theory that Harmon has for no other reason than it just is a thing, about how every other game is trying to be made Game of the Year, because even though we all know, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom already won it. So, with that being said, let's get into the video.
Every game that is not from Nintendo is Game of the Year this year. That seems to be the consensus among the vast majority of the gaming media. I've seen no end of posts from, YouTubers that nobody cares about how this is a great year for gaming, and there's a number of titles that could theoretically win Game of the Year. You have Armored Core 6, you have Hi-Fi Rush, you have Final Fantasy 16, Street Fighter 6, Diablo 4. And then among this crowd of mediocre games, you have Zelda, right? Like, one of these things is not like the other, right?
I mean, he's not wrong. One of these things is not like the other. There is games there that are literally masterpieces. There's games like Legend of Zelda. This is a joke. This is a joke. But to be fair, Legend of Zelda has been told, hey, this is going to probably be Game of the Year for a number of reasons. I think that one of the biggest reasons why it's going to be Game of the Year is most likely because it's actually okay. And it's a pretty good sequel to one of the best games ever. Now, personally, one of the things that I always held accountable to it is the fact that I don't think that sequels usually should be getting Game of the Year, or they get judged a little bit harsher for Game of the Year. Now, with that whole thing, that's usually just my conspiracy theory of that apparently. And I'm open to being wrong, because, again, I have people that are like, oh, a lot of these games that are Game of the Year are actually sequels to other games. It's like, that's true. A lot of the games are sequels to other games. That's usually because the Game Awards haven't been around for that long, because there were usually specialty gaming awards shows and stuff. So, yeah. So maybe there isn't anything to it and I'm just crazy. I don't know. It just sometimes feels like whenever there's a new game that comes along, it usually gets shunted into there. But whenever there is like a game that doesn't, is more of like a sequel, and it goes up against the game that does actually good stuff, it comes out a little bit harder to do things. In any case, no one's saying that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is not that, and saying that, oh, it already won it. It's like, no, it's a sequel. So in my eyes, at least, it knocked it down a couple points because of the fact that, again, it's a sequel. So, whatever. We're talking about this way too long. Moving on.
Like, Zelda is shoved in with all of these mediocre games as if it's not that, culturally significant, as if it's not that big of a deal, as if it's not blatantly better than everything else that came out this year. And yeah, that is, I stand by what I said a couple of weeks ago in that YouTube short, where I stated where it feels like everyone is throwing every single game at the wall, trying to get it to be popular, trying to get it to explode, trying to get there to be some kind of debate over what should be Game of the Year, when everyone already knows. Anyone who's actually played it will tell you it's Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Right now, it just kind of feels like people are desperately flailing around, trying to get something else to be talked about, trying to get something else out there. And it really does feel as if the only reason they're doing this is out of some petty contempt for Nintendo. They don't want to talk about the great games that Nintendo's putting out. They don't want to acknowledge that Zelda is the best it's ever been and is a major innovator when it comes to the open 3D space right now. Like the open 3D,
Congratulations, you got the sentence out eventually. Look, Harman, my boy, understanding individual, no. Because, sure, there is a lot of innovations for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom as a Zelda game, but at the same time, there's a lot of other mechanics that also are existing in other games. Nintendo isn't the one to kind of popularize things like making your own transportation and like weird-ass contraptions and things. Other games have done it before Nintendo did. Nintendo just implemented it really well for somehow and some reason. There is other games that perfect it and do their own open world things. Just because Zelda has done it, right, doesn't mean that it's the best at it and the pinnacle that it would ever be. That's one of the reasons why I get into a lot of arguments with other people in there, because whenever they talk about, company X brings the gaming market to the pinnacle that it ever was because it brings the games that I like personally, therefore the games I like are the best games that have ever been made. At least that's the kind of roundabout logic that the people have to use. You have to understand, I don't like a lot of games. There are games out there that I just vehemently hate and do not understand, mainly sports games, but that's my own personal opinion, and I don't say anything else as that. And while I might not understand why people play a lot of sports games, there are actually exceptions to that. For example, Rocket League. Rocket League is one of those games where it's like, I can see where it is, and I can see why it's coming from that, because, again, it's like, it mixes racing games and sports games together. It's like, that's a great combo. Why is this the only game that kind of does that and scratches that weird niche itch, but it's, like, somehow super popular? I don't know. To me, it comes down to the fact that everyone keeps trying to say that their opinion is the correct opinion, even though I know that my opinion is my opinion, and the objective correction, I usually tend to follow other people on that, or try to get as much information on it to try to make it one way or the other. It's one of those stupid points as to why people, at least on both the Sony and PlayStation side, say things like, oh, well, my exclusives are the best exclusives because no one else can play them. It's like, yeah, but maybe, just maybe, if you really like those games, you would appreciate when other people get to play those games or even talk about those games. I know that Harman kind of does that same thing, but his whole mentality is like, oh, I don't see people talking about it because that means there's an entire conspiracy theory that's working against Nintendo to try to smother their growth in the industry. There's a lot of other factors there, Harman. A lot of other factors.
The open 3D world right now, they don't want to admit that Zelda is doing things that other developers can't do. They don't want to admit that there will never again be a time in which other developers can compete. They don't want to admit that like games on more powerful pieces of hardware cannot do the things that Zelda is doing. They don't want to admit that. They are doing everything they possibly can to try and downplay this game. Trying to bury it, trying so they can write it off, trying so they can ignore it. And they've been doing this for a long time, you know, since Breath of the Wild, since Skyward Sword. Like, these games were always major innovators. They were always a lot of fun. They always had more content. They were always more engaging than their competition. But developers just keep throwing up their noses and just being like, I am not interested in that. I play real games like God of War 3 and Okame. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what genre it is. It doesn't matter the developer. It doesn't matter the quality of the game. It doesn't matter the Metacritic score. It doesn't matter how much a game sells. Like, what it comes down to is, like, no matter what happens, no matter what the situation is, everyone always pretends that Nintendo cannot compete with third parties, cannot compete with, like, PlayStation, cannot compete with PC, when in reality, it's those companies, the third parties, that cannot compete with Nintendo. And
How? No, like literally how? To me, that whole thing was basically him. By the way, first of all, I know I'm probably going to speed that bit up because I want to keep this video at least somewhat short today. But my biggest question is, how do you know? How exactly do you know that they can't compete in that context? Because not only can they compete, they've actually exceeded it in a lot of ways. For example, Just Cause, not even the newest one, Just Cause 2. Just Cause 2 and 3, right? Both of those games have a massive, huge open world with a ton of ways to get around. And you know what else? Fuck physics. Literally. The game says fuck you to physics and basically allows you to be an entire superhero. And not only that, but you can also blow shit up completely and utterly everything. Well, not everything, but there's a lot of destructible environments and destructible buildings that you can destroy in that environment. And a lot of the particles and the systems and everything that kind of like works together to make that game run at a solid, really good frame rate. Now, that's not to say that Nintendo and Tears of the Kingdom aren't good in their respective ways, but again, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Call of Duty Ghosts, okay. Well, I'm talking mainly about destructible and like physics-based stuff. There's a lot of games out there other than Nintendo games. And while Nintendo does have a nice toy box of things, they really kind of can't compete. If you think about it, even just for like a quick second, and put away your biases for Nintendo, and just like really think about the innovations that other companies are doing. I know that I'm speaking to a wall here, and that Harman more or less is basically just talking out of his ass cheeks right now because of that, but I don't see much of that sort of elitism, even from the developers. Well, that's not true. Some of the developers do have that elitism, just not for Nintendo games, because they know that Nintendo follows a different standard from them. I would put Nintendo comfortably in the AA sphere as of right now, but like the upper tier of the AA sphere that kind of borders on AAA. Mainly because of the fact of just how they operate. But again, it's one of those where it's like, it's a very gray area, and understandably, a lot of people say, oh, well, no, they are actually a AAA studio because they have a bunch of other stuff and they self-publish games. Again, true. And I'm not going to say that they're not. I'm going to say that they're on that borderline, though, because of just, as of right now, they've hit that glass ceiling, at least in their hardware department. So, which is why the Nintendo Switch 2, which is most likely a thing, hopefully, kind of, please, coming soon, whatever that next console might be, is pretty much long overdue, because once they break that ceiling with the new console to be able to actually innovate and, you know, get that same third-party support and stuff, it's one of the things where Nintendo's first party and even Sony's first party, and heck, even Microsoft's first party, cannot carry the consoles anymore. They used to be able to, just not anymore.
And it's long gotten past the point, I think, where like these companies can't compete with Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Nintendo's biggest franchises. Like, I also think that's true for Fire Emblem. I also think that's true for Kirby. I also think that's true for Animal Crossing, especially, right? Like, Nintendo's library of titles is so large and so expansive that I absolutely refuse to believe that anyone could be like not interested in playing any of it, right?
I'm not. Just wanted to answer that question. I'm not. I would much rather play Escape from Tarkov or, you know, first-person shooters, or heck, even Call of Duty over anything of those games, personally. While those games are not bad, they're not my cup of tea. I don't want to play those games, personally. Like, I've played them. I played some Mario, I played some Zelda, I played some Pokemon, I played some other stuff. I get bored of them, unfortunately. So, sorry. I don't want to play them right now. Give me Call of Duty, give me more spectacle, give me more something else. Just saying.
Like, if you don't like Nintendo, if you don't respect them, you simply don't like video games. And I've been saying this for a very long time, right? And more, I think these people are looking ridiculous when they try and condemn Tears of the Kingdom for some arbitrary fake reason, right? They keep trying to say it's overrated. They keep trying to say that like Splatoon 3 isn't great. They keep trying and trying and trying, and yet nothing is working. At the end of the year, when all is said and done, Tears of the Kingdom is still going to be a masterpiece. It's still going to be one of the best games ever made. Like, I think we live in an era where the gaming influencer, has absolutely no control over what the gaming public thinks about or plays when it comes to video games.
When did they ever have control? No, like, legitimately. He says that we live in an era where the gaming influencer can't actually do that. And that means that I, being a gaming influencer, have no control over that. Here's the dumbass part, right? The influencer, just the influencer in general, doesn't have the majority of control over their audience to begin with. I mean, and more often than not, people have been trying to say, "Oh, well, you need to apologize for your audience because your audience basically harassed me." It's like, I don't have control over that. I just talked about my opinions and I talk about this, and unless I am actually actively saying go out and hurt this person, which I never do. I do not want you to go out and harass Harman Smith. Do not do that on my behalf. I do not condone that. You are not a true fan if you don't understand this specifically. It's one of those things where you can't really control the populace, and Harman's right in that context. Again, there are times when like Harman does have like a little nugget of actual knowledge poking through that hamster brain that he has, but it's not stupid to say that Tears of the Kingdom isn't going to at least get a mention at the Game Awards, if that's a thing. Because here's, again, one of the big things that I will say here. I respect Nintendo. I really do. Because they're doing their own thing. They're not trying to compete on the exact same level as all these other games. They're trying to compete, no less, because, again, they are a company that's trying to make money, obviously. But, just because they're trying to compete doesn't mean that they're not competing doesn't mean that they're trying to compete on the same level as some of the other games. They're just trying to make their own and do their own thing. And to be fair, it's not a bad thing. It's really, really not. And again, it just comes down to the fact that Harman, whenever I cover his videos and stuff, there's really no substance to do that because he's just so wrong. At least it feels that way. And again, if Tears of the Kingdom wins, I know that Harman's going to be like, haha, I was right, everyone else was wrong, haha. But when it doesn't, he's going to be like, oh, well, the gaming media is trying to snub Nintendo's dominant market thing. Even though Nintendo is doing really good. I think that they're doing like their second best. They're the second overall in the gaming market, which is pretty solid. But again, it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's just so stupid to even talk about this. I should really cut this video down and stop rambling about stuff. In any case, I think that'll do it about for this video. I don't really know how to end these things, but that's it. My name is GamePing21. If you like what it is that I do, links down to everything to support me monetarily and stuff like that. It's totally unnecessary to do so, but if you want to, everything is down. Everything is down there. I also managed to release my new single, F Sound. I basically have that on the Bandcamp. I'll probably link it specifically in the description for the next couple of days. It's also available now on the channel. Probably by the time this video goes up, I'm going to have uploaded it probably before this. So if you want to go and listen to it, there you go. And Harman, you just do not have a brain. And a piece off